to a brand new episode of Scott Fox After 9 and a brand new week as well. We're down to the final 2 weeks of school summer. How you feeling about that? Doesn't it seem like it took forever for summer to get here? I mean, I'm thinking back to April and May when it was cold and rained like every single day. And then June was cold. Then we finally got July and it went from chilly to like straight up blazing hot. Stayed that way for a few weeks, and now we're on our way back down, and summer's almost over. It goes by way too quick. If you get an opportunity to get outside and do some of the fun things that we can do in this country, I highly encourage you to do it, because this summer was almost a bit of a ripoff, actually. Took forever to get here, wasn't particularly comfortable once it did, and now it's just flying by. Frustrating stuff. But anyway, that's okay. I hope you had a great weekend. Today on the pod, I'm going to be covering a number of different things. I know there's some folks that are tuning in today looking for an update on Silent Date Guy. Him and Silent Date Girl did go away this weekend. I don't have the details yet. He hasn't texted me to tell me how the date went. So as soon as I get some info, I'm going to have that for you. Looking down the line, realistically, I'm thinking Wednesday. I will probably have a full Silent Date update for you. Probably Wednesday, because I know tomorrow there's going to be a ton of stuff to talk about. See, today is the day that sets up all of the things that are happening tomorrow. And here are some of the things that are on my mind. Today, there is a massive peace summit being held in Washington. It is the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. And for some reason, the leaders from Europe are coming as well. And some people are making a very big deal of the fact that the European leaders are coming. Now, if you ask the White House, they'll say, we invited them. They should be here. They've got a stake in this. We want the Europeans to be part of the process. There's other people here who are trying to suggest that the European leaders are going as backup so that Zelensky doesn't get bullied by Donald Trump. I mean, I don't think that that was ever a realistic possibility. I know there was a falling out in the Oval Office. That happened many, many months ago now, and I'm pretty sure we're past that. I don't think there's any risk that Zelensky is going to get bullied unless he has Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron sitting behind him. I really don't think that that's going to happen, but that's okay. You can hear from some of the key people involved in this episode of After 9. Also going to talk about the Air Canada strike. That is just minutes away. I've got details today on the meeting that Prime Minister Carney is going to have with Ontario Premier Doug Ford. And today is by-election day in Alberta. Pierre Poilievre will have a seat in the House of Commons at the end of the day today. And then I'm hoping that we can put all of this hate to bed. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that when I get to that part on the podcast. Again, today is the setup episode. I'm going to try and offer you some context and clarity into what's happening so that you are fully informed heading into the discussion and debate that is inevitably going to happen as today goes on and into tomorrow and throughout the week. I want to start off today with the Air Canada strike. Let me read you the story from the Canadian press. Flight attendants with Air Canada are expected to stay on the picket lines today as a battle against the federal government return to work order continues. The flight attendants, represented by the Canadian Union of Public Employees, says they filed a federal court challenge against a Canada Industrial Relations Board order that said more than 10,000 flight attendants had to return to work as of 2 p.m. Sunday. That order came after the jobs minister, Patty Hajdu, sent both parties to binding arbitration on Saturday, saying she was intervening in the dispute because of its impact on Canadians and the economy. Air Canada has said it postponed plans to have flights operating again until this evening, despite the union saying employees will remain on strike until a fair, negotiated collective agreement is reached. Let's parse through this here. This is what happened. The flight attendants, who were quite mean to me on social media this weekend, by the way. I'm going to point that out because I think if you've been listening to the pod, I've been trying to be supportive of the flight attendants. I happen to think they're in a good spot. Now, I tweeted out a common sense solution the other day. Air Canada had said, we're going to resume flights. And then the union said, no, we're not doing it. So Air Canada then had to cancel those plans to resume flights. Now, all I suggested on social media was a compromise. I love compromise. We're never going to make other people fully come to our side. So I think we need to find some middle ground. Here was my thought. Since it was ruled an illegal strike, since the labor minister ordered this to go to binding arbitration anyway, and the flight attendants were hell-bent on continuing their strike, which I don't even necessarily blame them for, I thought, here's a compromise. Go back to work, like was ordered, fly home the people that are stranded, then go back out on strike on Wednesday. Now, maybe you like that idea. Maybe you don't like that idea. But what I'll tell you is the people who did not like that idea, the union types, were so mean. And not just mean, I mean like hateful in their comments. How dare you speak up against the union? Well, just so you know, I've been on your side for a long time now. Now, maybe you're not podcast listeners, but I have been on your side, Air Canada, CUPE, union. But since you want to be such pricks on social media about it, maybe I'm not going to be as supportive of it. Here's the reality. Air Canada flight attendants agreed to do what they're doing right now, or up until the strike started. They agreed to work for no pay before and after the flights. That's just a fact. The deal that Air Canada ratified 4 years ago, the flight attendants ratified 4 years ago, is the deal they're still on now. Now, of course, they have a right to change their mind, but it doesn't change the fact that they agreed to do this. This was a deal that was worked out between the two sides 4 years ago. Now that this contract is rolled around, I think the flight attendants saw a great opportunity there for this. Hey, we can get more and the public will be on our side if they find out we're not getting paid for these things. And by and large, I think the public is on the side of the flight attendants. But again, it doesn't change the fact that 4 years ago, the union said this is a good deal. 4 years ago, the members accepted this deal. Why is it so outrageous now that flight attendants couldn't even work one more day on that current deal that they just agreed to 4 years ago? That's the other side of this. And you know what? I haven't gotten too far into it. But again, since I got crapped all over on social media this weekend for suggesting a compromise, maybe I will tell the other side of the story. You know, I don't necessarily even agree with everything I just said, but that is the reality. Did the flight attendants actually agree to it 4 years ago? Yeah, they did. Now they'll say they agreed to it because they were worried about losing their jobs during COVID. Okay, well, that's realistic. I don't blame them if they want to change their mind. But either way, this woe is me, clutching the pearls. Oh, my God, this is outrageous that they would dare make us work for no pay. Again, you agreed to this. This was the deal that was in place until Friday. It's kind of crazy to me that we've gone from one extreme to the other, and I don't know that the other side is really getting a lot of attention on this, so I'm going to say it. There it is. Now, where do we go from here? Well, I think it's pretty outrageous, to be perfectly honest with you, that it took not even a full day, a matter of hours, for the federal labor minister, Patty Hajdu, to order this to binding arbitration. You know, a strike sometimes can bring people back to the table. What we should always want is a fair, negotiated, collective agreement. To just wait for the strike to come and then automatically rubber stamp it and declare, nope, binding arbitration, which is a big win for Air Canada, by the way. If it's a negotiated settlement, they're probably going to, it would probably cost them a lot more than the arbitrated agreement. So it's a win for Air Canada. They're going to get back in the sky less than 24 hours later. But something happened here that I don't see very often, and I'm sure you haven't seen it either. The union said, no, we're not going back to work. The minister ordered them back to work, and they said no. Well, now what do we do? That's a strange situation. I mean, technically, the flight attendants are in violation of an order right now. I'm told that means they could be on the hook for damages, liability, fines, and much, much more. Possibly even jail time, depending on how hardcore they want to go on this. Where do we go from here? Government says, go back to work. Workers say, no, we want a fair deal. And I don't blame them for wanting a fair deal. I really don't. This is the union leader on Saturday ripping up the agreement. Listen to this.
This is the CIRB order. Here's what I'm supposed to do. I'm expected to say, stand down. I'm expected to direct you to go back to work. I'm expected to end this strike. I said it clearly then, and I will say it clearly now. This strike will end when we get a collective agreement that works for our members.
Yikes. Little unhinged there, but I certainly appreciate the spirit. Okay, yeah. Government says we're going back to work and we're saying no. Again, I kind of don't blame the union in this case. Did the government even give it a chance? I mean, we have a right to strike in this country. We do. Collective bargaining didn't work, and if it doesn't work, the employer has a right to lock out, and the employees have a right to strike. That's just all there is to it. It seems like, again, this liberal government is trampling on the rights of workers to strike. They jumped in on this one quick. I mean, they didn't even wait for the ink to dry on the strike notice. They were all over this. Nope. Binding arbitration, go back to work. They said it's in the best interest of the Canadian people. Well, I mean, there may be some truth to that. I've been hearing no shortage of stories from people over the last number of days that are stranded in different places. That was part of the reason I thought the flight attendants should go back to work for just 1 or 2 days, fly home the people that are stranded, and then Air Canada can do an orderly shutdown until the strike is over. And you know what? If the strike takes a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, so be it. The workers have a right to a fair, negotiated, collective agreement. They do. How does that work, though, if the government just jumps in and orders them back to work? You know who we need to hear from here? We need to hear from the Prime Minister. You know, Patty Hajdu may be in charge of labor here, but we all know the Prime Minister is the one calling the shots. There's no way Patty ordered them back to work without even consulting the Prime Minister. Well, just this morning, the Prime Minister finally showed up back at work. He took last week off. Clearly busy, a lot going on. Changes around the Prime Minister's office, by the way. You'll likely see this on social at some point. The Prime Minister's office had Canadian flags flying outside of it. He replaced one of the Canadian flags with a pride flag now. Video of the workers doing it. I don't know if that's going to come up or not, but I have a feeling that some people are going to have a problem with taking down a Canadian flag to replace it with a pride flag, particularly when it's August. It's not even Pride Month. What's that all about, Mark? Well, let's hear what he had to say about the flight attendant strike. Here's the Prime Minister.
To say to Air Canada union workers?
I'll say the following. We recognize very much the critical role that flight attendants play in keeping Canadians and their families safe as they travel, comfortable as they travel. And it's important that they're compensated equitably at all times, fairly at all times. That's the reason why there have been negotiations over the course of the last 8 months. It is disappointing that those negotiations did not come to an agreement, and it was the judgment of both the union and the company that they were at an impasse. That's not my judgment, it's their judgment. And so we are in a situation where literally hundreds of thousands of Canadians and visitors to our country are being disrupted by this action. I urge both parties to resolve this as quickly as possible, and the Minister will have more to say. Minister Hajdu will have more to say later.
Did the government make a mistake imposing binding arbitration on the weekend?
He didn't answer that, so I will. Yes, it was a mistake, Mark. It was a mistake. He's really talking out of both sides of his mouth, but I think that's kind of the MO for this Prime Minister, isn't it? This Prime Minister doesn't seem to give a whole lot of... He answers questions in a fulsome way. I shouldn't even say that. He does answer questions way, way, way better than Justin Trudeau ever did. But what is he saying there? He says, yeah, they have a right to a collective agreement. And then he legislated them right back to work. Well, that doesn't instill a whole lot of confidence, Mark. And why, again, is this Liberal government getting involved in this labor dispute and ordering people back to work before they've had a chance to get a fair, negotiated, collective agreement? Why is he doing that? I don't understand, but you know, we were told this is a different Prime Minister, but it's all the same stuff. I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing Trudeau was doing, and now Carney is carrying it on. I do understand his argument that there are a lot of traveling Canadians and visitors to our country who are being greatly inconvenienced. I mean, that's kind of the point of a strike. It's supposed to be inconvenient. It's supposed to drive people back to the bargaining table and work out a deal. Well, so far, that hasn't happened. So far, there's no deal. The government got involved, and now the union is going to have to test the strength of the government's order. Imagine that. If the union wins this, and there's a good chance they might, If they go in front of a judge and the judge says that return to work order was illegal or unconstitutional, this is a big win for the union. Not great, though, for the government and their future intervention into labor disputes. That's not going to work out well for them at all. Prime Minister's got to get a hold of this. He does. And as far as the inconvenience to the traveling public is concerned, maybe this is exactly the reason, Mark, that we need a hell of a lot more competition in our skies. Maybe Air Canada shouldn't be the only game in town. I think most people, when they're searching for a vacation, will search for flights, right? Air Canada usually comes up first because they've got the most of them. Well, if Air Canada's not flying, WestJet is a pretty good alternative, and then you can fill in some gaps with Porter and Flair and the other ones. I'm not saying we don't need Air Canada, but I'm saying until the workers have their right to have a fair, negotiated, collective agreement, until they've had a chance to get that done properly, I don't know why the government is intervening in this right now. Inconvenient? Yes. Unworkable? No. We have other alternatives. But let's get some more carriers in the sky here in Canada. Delta has got a great operation going down in the States. In fact, they, I'm told, led the industry in paying flight attendants for the ground time. They just did that, and now all the airlines want it. Okay, Delta seems to be a pioneer. Give them more access to the Canadian skies. Not just Delta, give it to all of the American airlines, and maybe some European ones too. They should be able to fly domestic routes. If Aer Lingus has trips coming over here from Ireland, and they decide, you know what, it might be kind of lucrative if we did a Toronto to Edmonton flight, and then Edmonton back to wherever in Ireland. They should be allowed to do that. We're so protectionist in this country, and that's part of the reason that we pay so much. We don't have a lot of competition in the skies. I'm okay with this. Let those Air Canada planes stay grounded until a fair agreement is reached. And if they truly cannot reach a deal, then we can talk about binding arbitration. But frankly, ordering them back to work after only a few hours doesn't really seem like this is a party on the side of labor. You know what I mean? Now let's switch gears. I'm going to stay with that Prime Minister's news conference there. Not really a news conference. It was just him walking into the office, but right in front of the cameras. The reporters were there. They knew he was coming, and they wanted to ask some questions. There's a couple other things going on in the world. Let's hear what the Prime Minister has to say here.
Prime Minister, can we get an update on how trade talks are going? How are they going?
Good morning. Bonjour.
How are trade talks going?
Well, actually, I'm just going to meet with Minister LeBlanc. We'll have a discussion of that, and important discussion with Premier Ford this morning on a variety of aspects for the Ontario economy, the Canadian economy, which of course includes trade, but goes much more to the issues that we can control and how we build out from within.
Like what would some examples be?
Well, we'll talk about the housing sector. We'll talk about steel, auto, new sectors of the economy, including artificial intelligence. What we're doing in terms of making Canada competitive.
Okay, I'm going to stop there because next he's going to talk about the meetings that are happening today in Ottawa, and I will as well. But first, let's talk about what he said. Absolutely nothing. How are trade negotiations going? He didn't answer the question. He's going to talk to the minister today. He's going to meet with Premier Ford today. Premier Ford does want to talk about the situation with America, but Premier Ford's got a few other things that are on his mind too. And I don't know that this is necessarily going to be a happy-go-lucky meeting here for the Prime Minister, because Premier Ford seems fairly fired up. Let's remember what Premier Ford said last week about a number of topics. Here is Premier Ford talking about his meeting that's happening today with the Prime Minister.
Tariffs have obviously been top of mind, especially here in Windsor, Essex, by being a border city. What are the next steps in terms of talks with the Prime Minister and other premiers across Canada to keep ensuring that working individuals are protected?
Well, I'm going to see the Prime Minister up in Ottawa. I think it's next week. When is it, Jules? Monday, okay. See, I listened to the boss there. So Monday I'm going up to have a one-on-one meeting with the Prime Minister, and I've told him how I feel. We got to create the environment, and just a few things we can do can really change things. Number one, we're taxed to death. Simple as that. And, highest tax bracket's 54%. And believe me, you don't have to be making millions to be at 54%. You make a couple $100,000 and 54%. And when you go out shopping, all the taxable goods that you buy, So we're left with nothing in our pockets. And Economics 101, put money into people's pockets. They're going to go out and spend it. As simple as going out for dinner, buying a pair of sneakers, buying jeans. That stimulates the economy. And that $3 billion we gave back to the taxpayers this year, they went out and they spent it. And I'm happy they did spend it. And then you do the same for the companies. That's actually, the companies even probably more important. You reduce the corporate tax. When I had our facility, when I opened up in 98, 99 and in the U.S. in Chicago, going into 2000, the Canadian corporate tax was lower than the U.S. So let's beat Trump at his own game. Let's make this the most competitive place in the world, because companies nowadays have choices. They're either going to go to a competitive place with great, smart people, or they're going somewhere else, and they're going to get lower taxes. And we need to lower those taxes to create an environment for companies to invest. So when I came into office, the budget was $150 billion. We saw $70 billion of investment. We grew the revenues to $70 billion. I'd never raise a tax. I don't have to. I will never raise a tax, because it's counterintuitive to have people invest. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to make sure we're competitive. So number one, lower taxes. Number two, let's get rid of the HST. I will follow that on anyone that buys a home, not just new home buyers, but anyone. And let's do it to a point of 2 years, so it puts pressure on the market. If you go out there and say we're getting rid of it for 10 years, well, everyone's going to la-di-da, la-di-da. Let's lower that, right? In 2 years, lower the HST. That's massive amounts of savings for people. When you're buying a home, $600,000, $700,000, $900,000, or even $1 million, that saves a lot of money. And I don't know your development charges here, but
I'm going to leave Premier Ford there for that particular one, but it gives you an idea of what's on his mind. Premier Ford has figured it out. I'm sure deep down, Mark Carney knows it. If you lower costs, that would be great for the economy. If you lower taxes, it's much more likely that people can survive and that businesses will want to set up here in Canada. But even Doug's wondering, why would anybody come here when we're not competitive? Our taxes are way, way, way too high. Can Doug have any impact today on Prime Minister Carney lowering taxes? I hope he does. I just don't think that Prime Minister Carney is going to commit today to lowering taxes. If he does, great. Doug talked briefly there about eliminating the HST on home purchases. Good. That's a great idea. I don't know why the government is taxing that anyway. They tax the income and then they tax what we buy with what's left over. No wonder people are broke. If we can get rid of that, that's great. The problem is I'm just not that optimistic that Mark Carney is interested in doing that, particularly when we're going to have a budget crisis in just over a month. Can you believe Parliament is still not sitting for another month? Not until the end of September is Parliament going to sit. We don't have a budget. And when it does come out, it's going to tell us we're close to $100 billion in deficit. Way more than the last time we got an update when Trudeau was in charge. I don't know even if Carney wants to cut taxes, I don't know if he's going to. And how is Doug Ford going to handle that if he gets a no from the Prime Minister? I'm going to play you one more of Premier Ford talking in advance about his meeting with Prime Minister Carney.
I'll tell you what's causing this problem. Number one is the uncertainty. People are nervous as anything out there if they're going to have a job or not. That's probably one of the number one reasons. Number two, the Governor of Bank of Canada has to lower those interest rates. He mentioned that below 2%, you'll lower them. Didn't lower them. They're at 2.75%. Knock them down 0.5% or even a full percentage. You'll see the market take off like greased lightning there. And as for the HST, I got my knuckles wrapped a little bit from the finance minister because he's doing his job. That's a lot of money, but that's something we'll sit down with the finance minister and the prime minister and see how we can look at the HST for certain sectors. And the other thing is a big one. I know the mayor may not like this, but the DCs. You got to knock down some of the DCs. So if everyone pitches in, the province, the cities, and the feds, it's never just one level of government. We need everyone pitching in. And then the stress tests. Folks, I'm going to simplify this. If people don't understand the stress tests, let's just say your interest rate, I'm just throwing out wild numbers, 3%. You go to the bank, they put 2% on top of that. You have to make sure that you can handle a 2% interest hike. Let's knock it down by 1% at least. And I get it. You don't want to be in the 2008 scenario that you owe more than what the house is worth. But you got to get more people approved to buy homes. And how you're able to buy a home is get a good paying job. And so we're trying to create that environment and condition.
I'm not really sure that Doug explained what that is, so let me interject here, if I may. The stress test is something that was introduced when Kathleen Wynne was the Premier of Ontario, and basically what it is right now we have a stress test. When you apply for a mortgage, they don't just make sure that your income and credit history is sufficient to pay that mortgage. They tack on 2 percentage points more of interest to see if you could handle that. And if you can handle that, then you qualify for the mortgage. Doug is saying keep the stress test, but lower the threshold from 2% to maybe 1%. By the way, I've said it many times before, not a conspiracy theorist, but here we go. They introduced that stress test right before they started jacking up interest rates like crazy. There's no way that was a coincidence. There's no way that out of nowhere they decided to introduce a stress test and then the interest rates went through the roof. They wanted to know how far they could push Canadians before Canadians started getting foreclosed upon en masse. I believe that. I believe that all of that was planned. I truly do, because this has been a massive transfer of wealth from the regular middle class folks to the bankers. And credit to Doug Ford there. I don't know if I adequately praised him after those news conferences. I did play some of those last week, but I'll just double down. Look at Doug Ford sounding like a conservative again. Very good. That's what I want from my premier. We need lower taxes. We need lower fees. Those development charges got to go. And we need to lower interest rates. We have to. Right now, people are not buying. The real estate market is stagnant at best. Once we're officially in a recession, it's going to get way, way, way worse. And developers can't even build because the interest rates are so high and they pay those rates as well. I hope Doug has a lot of progress made today in Ottawa. I assume if he's going, they've already pre-agreed on a few things that they're going to talk about after the meeting. But let's also keep in mind some of the other things that are affecting us that are squarely in the court of the federal government. And namely, I'm talking about bail reform. Over the weekend, 8-year-old in Toronto, 8-year-old kid asleep in his bed, shot to death by stray bullets that were sprayed in his neighborhood. An 8-year-old kid was killed this weekend in his own home, in his own bed. There's way too many guns on the street. Way too many gangbangers that are not afraid of consequences. Again, I implore you, Mr. Prime Minister, it was a horrible mistake to let this wait until fall. You could have dealt with this right after you were elected and you chose not to. Got to fix the bail laws. Has to be done. And if Ford can make any progress in that area, I'll be just as happy with that too. We need to get the finances in order. We need to get bail reform done. And we need to know when this prime minister is going to stop talking and start doing something. Where is the damn list of nation-building projects that we're going to do? Where is the list? We should have shovels in the ground, not just still waiting to find out what we're going to do. Why isn't that done yet, Mark? What are you waiting for? Get this list out and start building. Let's go. Another thing, Prime Minister, we have a major crisis here with homelessness and with our economy. You have an ability to unlock the power of Canada's resources. When are you going to do it? We're facing a unity crisis. Alberta is talking about separation. They're holding public town hall meetings. Build pipelines. Let's go. Start shipping our LNG overseas. Let's go. Figure it out. What is the problem here? We're in a recession. The government's going to have to admit it soon, and the government doesn't seem to have a plan to generate any revenue to help pull us out of the hole. It's insanity, if you ask me. Insanity. Mark Carney, you got to get moving here, my friend. Let's go. Stop talking. Stop your photo ops. Your vacation is over. Get your ass working here and get building. Canada strong, right? That's what you said for months. Give me your vote and I will protect you from Donald Trump. I will build Canada strong. There's zero evidence that that's happening. Let's go. You've had enough time. Let's move here. I want to play just a little bit more of the Prime Minister because he answered another question on what's happening in Washington today. This is about the meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump. Listen to this.
To President Zelensky regarding should he accept any deal?
I gave that advice yesterday in a meeting with President Zelensky and the coalition.
And what was it? What was it?
Do you have any comment on
can
Canada,
take
sir?
that.
Anything to say to Eric?
That's it. That's all he would say. We look like, what's the best way to put this? We are not taken seriously by the rest of the world. What is it Mark Carney said about Canada? We're the most European of the non-European countries. Well, the European countries are going to Washington today. They've got a seat at the table at the White House with Zelensky and Trump. Canada wasn't even invited. We've given almost $30 billion to Ukraine. Almost $30 billion. More per capita than any other country. And we didn't even get invited to Washington to participate in this meeting today. What does that tell you? We don't even have a seat at the table. It's embarrassing. It's actually embarrassing. Why are we not there? While all the world leaders, Macron, Starmer, Meloni, Zelensky, Trump, all of them, well, they're all meeting today. Ursula's going too, the chair of the European Union. While all of them are having a serious conversation about world peace and ending the war in Ukraine, Mark Carney is coming off vacation, sitting in his own office in Ottawa, meeting with Doug Ford, not meeting with stakeholders and world leaders to try and make peace in Ukraine. We weren't even invited. That's an embarrassment, and everybody should acknowledge that. Let's be very, very clear. That's a shot at Canada. Not even invited. And by the way, the Europeans, they could bring somebody. They were all invited to this meeting. If they wanted Canada there, we would have been there. If Trump wanted us there, we would have been there. But frankly, we're not there. And that says that nobody advocated for Canada to have a seat at the table. And it didn't even occur to them to invite us. 30 billion tax dollars to Ukraine. We didn't even get invited. I mean, think about that. I'm mortified. I find this deeply embarrassing, to be honest with you. Now, speaking of these meetings today in Washington, there is some who are speculating, and I'm going to go not far out on the limb here when I suggest that it's folks on the left who don't like Donald Trump or anything that he does, suggesting that today, the reason the European leaders are going to the White House as well is because everyone's afraid Trump is going to bully Zelensky into giving up too much of Ukraine. He's going to bully him. Maybe even give him a swirly or stick his head in the toilet or something. Like true bully tactics to get what he wants and try and earn himself a Nobel Peace Prize and bring peace to Ukraine. End the war between Russia and Ukraine. I don't believe that. I believe the White House when they say the Europeans were invited because they're stakeholders. Inevitably, someone is going to have to provide a security guarantee to Ukraine, particularly because it doesn't look like Ukraine is going to be allowed into NATO. That is a red line in the sand by Russia. They do not want Ukraine to be part of NATO. So somebody's going to have to offer a security guarantee. The Europeans, they want this job. They want it because it's a pet project. It's going to cost a whole ton of money. They would love to do that. That's their thing. But maybe the Americans want to go in and protect Ukraine. Wouldn't that be interesting? Keep the Europeans out. America defends Ukraine. And whatever it is in Ukraine that the European leaders and the globalists are so fascinated with. There's something about Ukraine, and I don't know what it is, but this has been on my mind for a long time. Well, let's get an answer to the question once and for all. Is Donald Trump planning to bully Zelensky? And that's why the European leaders are coming as backup so that Zelensky doesn't get bullied. Here is U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday on Face the Nation.
You know, there's concern from the Europeans that President Zelensky is going to be bullied into signing something away. That's why you have these European leaders coming as backup tomorrow. Can you
No, it isn't. That's not why they're coming as back. That's not true. No, but that's not that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're not coming.
That February Oval Office
they're coming
meeting
here tomorrow
in front of television cameras where President Zelensky.
Do you know how many meetings we've had since then?
Oh, no, I know. And I was just up in Alaska watching the one with Vladimir Putin where a red carpet rolled out.
No, but it was Zelensky. We've had more meetings. We've had one meeting with Putin and like a dozen meetings with Zelensky. But that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're coming here tomorrow because we've been working with the Europeans. We talked to them last week. There were meetings in the UK over the previous weekend.
And they said President Trump was going to demand a ceasefire.
As early as Thursday. No. But you said that they're coming here tomorrow to keep Zelensky from being bullied. They're not coming here tomorrow. Oh, this is such a stupid media narrative that they're coming here tomorrow because Trump is going to bully Zelensky into a bad deal. We've been working with these people for weeks on this stuff. They're coming here tomorrow because they chose to come here tomorrow. We invited them to come. We invited them to come. The president invited them to come.
But the president told those Europeans.
I mean, she is desperate to try and keep that narrative alive, but you just heard it from the Secretary of State. And if you don't want to believe him, fine. You don't have to believe him. I believe him. There's no evidence that Trump... What did you think Trump was going to do? Do you think he was going to hold a gun to his head? Like I said, do you think he was going to give him a swirly and stick his head in the toilet? What was he going to do to bully him? Come on. That wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to happen. The European leaders are coming because they were invited, because they want to be there, and because they're stakeholders. And they want to try and negotiate that they get to offer the peace, the security that Ukraine wants. They want to be the ones to defend Ukraine. And I think the Americans want to be the ones also to defend Ukraine. Why? I'm still trying to figure it out. I still don't know what it is about Ukraine. Now, something that did come up in that clip that I want to address because a lot of people have an issue with it, Vladimir Putin is considered the enemy right now because he invaded Ukraine and heavy sanctions against him. Donald Trump met with Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday. There was a red carpet rolled out. I don't know what was behind that. I don't know if that was Trump trying to seem very accommodating so that he could maybe ingratiate himself and make more progress in the bargaining table. I don't know if that was something that the Russians demanded, that Putin be put on the same pedestal as Trump. I'm not sure. But I will say it's not a good look. Not a good look at all. I thought it was a great look when those fighter jets and bombers flew right over top of both of them. That was a sign of American military strength. That was done for a reason. Rolling out a red carpet, there were other ways that this could have been done. Let's be honest. You didn't need to do it. Symbolic or not, that didn't need to be done. One more that I want to play. This was on Air Force One coming back from Alaska. President Trump was asked about the UK, France, and Canada recognizing a Palestinian state. Remember that? That announcement has really lost a lot of steam since it got made. President Trump was asked about Canada and our allies offering statehood to Palestine. Listen to this.
Is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution?
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas. And I'm not about to do that.
Okay, there it is, right from the president himself. It's rewarding Hamas, and he doesn't want any part of that. Eventually, there's going to have to be a solution. The two-state solution is the one we've been talking about for years. But the conditions have to be right to do that. And frankly, Palestine's going to have to do a few things, not the least of which is release the hostages. Got to release the hostages. A couple more things I want to get to in this episode. You know what? I might even wrap it up on this because I think that this is a good one. As you know, in the last federal election, the leader of the Conservative Party, despite having record numbers turn out to vote and a huge vote haul, increased his seat count greatly, Pierre Poilievre lost his own seat in what I'm still saying is an extremely questionable result. Extremely questionable in that riding. I'm still not 100% sure what went on there. My personal opinion on it, I don't believe it. Something funny went on in that riding. I'll just say it. Something went on in that riding. But whatever, Pierre Poilievre lost. So he has to run in a by-election. And, the Liberals were real happy They got rid of Pierre. Not only did they retain government, it was a minority, but that's okay. They're still in government. They still get all their perks and all their budgets, and they can still influence policy and that sort of thing. And they got rid of Pierre Poilievre, and Liberals hate Pierre Poilievre. He was extremely effective at prosecuting the case that the Liberals were incompetent under Justin Trudeau. The last thing Liberals want is Pierre Poilievre back in the House of Commons. And they thought if they got rid of him in his riding, and the PC or the Conservatives didn't win, that would be the end of Pierre Poilievre. They could install Doug Ford as leader of the federal Conservative Party and then sort it out with Doug. Well, that didn't happen because Pierre Poilievre found another riding to run in. And since then, the media in particular has been raising the bar constantly. You know, first they tried to make a huge deal out of the fact that Pierre Poilievre wasn't even from that what is it? Crowfoot Battle something, whatever the name of the riding is that Pierre Poilievre is running in for the by-election today. Today is election day. They tried to say, you know what? No, he shouldn't be allowed to run there because he doesn't live there. I mean, that's a preposterous argument. It's legitimately insane. Justin Trudeau, not from Papineau. Jagmeet Singh, not from Burnaby. Mark Carney, not from, which riding is he in? Nepean. There are countless examples of high profile, not just politicians, but actual leaders running in ridings that they're not from and they don't live in. Now, at least Pierre is from Alberta. I think that helps out a lot. There's no problem with him running there. It happens all the time. And then they tried to raise the bar again because Pierre is running in what's considered one of the safest Conservative seats in the country. They won this thing by 83%, or with 83% of the vote just a few months ago. Now they're raising the bar. Well, if Pierre doesn't get at least 83%, he's a failure and he's got to step down. He's got to step down if he doesn't get at least 83%. What a joke. What a joke. When I look at the lengths that they are going to try and get Pierre Poilievre to lose this election today, it is actually shocking to me how afraid of Pierre Poilievre the Liberals are. They are deathly afraid of Pierre Poilievre winning this and getting his seat back, because once he does, there's no more argument. Pierre Poilievre will once again be the leader of the opposition. He will lead question period. He will have a voice in the House of Commons, and then we can start talking about issues again as soon as Parliament starts resuming. Here's the deal with Pierre. It's not a big deal that he's running in a riding that is not his own. That is not a big deal. It's been done countless times by New Democrats, Liberals, and more. That's okay. He does not need to get 83% of the vote to be considered a success in this by-election. There are a lot of efforts to try and cost him this. That longest ballot initiative, there's over 200 people running in this riding. Over 200. So much so, Elections Canada had to change the rules and say, well, for this one, we're not going to print off a ballot with over 200 names on it. It's confusing. It's almost a form of voter suppression. So we're going to change it around so that you need to actually write in the name of the candidate you would like to vote for. All indications are Pierre is going to win this one handily, and he's going to be a member of Parliament again, and he will officially be the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition. That's going to happen. It doesn't matter if he wins it by 100%, 90%, 80%, 70%, or if he wins by just 1%. It doesn't matter as long as he wins. That's the bar in every riding across Canada. For someone to suggest that he needs to get a certain percentage of the vote to be considered a success is completely ridiculous, especially when people are trying so hard to cost him this by-election. It's a bananas argument. After today, Pierre Poilievre will have his seat in the House of Commons again, and then we can get back to it. I still see a scenario where we're having a federal election, maybe in the winter, maybe in the fall, but probably in the winter. I think we're going to be voting again, and I think that has everything to do with the conditions that Prime Minister Trudeau and Prime Minister Carney have created. It's all coming to a head in the next few weeks. When the budget comes out and people see how broke we are, when people see we have no influence around the world, when people finally get this list of nation building projects and find out what we are and aren't doing, when Alberta separation really starts to fire up, when people can't afford their mortgage anymore and start losing their homes, the Association of Municipalities put out a study this weekend. Right now in Ontario, they say there are 80,000 unhoused people. 80,000. They think it's going to jump to 300,000 in very short order. That will be apocalyptic for Canada and for our economy. Buckle up, everybody. It's going to be an interesting few months here in Canada and around the world, too. Hey, let's hope for peace today. Let's hope that President Trump and President Zelensky, with consultation from the allies in Europe, can figure out a deal that also works for Russia and we can get peace in Ukraine. And let's also hope that the Air Canada flight attendants and Air Canada can come to a negotiated, fair settlement without government intervention. Friends, tomorrow is going to be action-packed. I've got Carney and Ford. I got Trump and Zelensky. It's all going down right here on another episode of Scott Fox After 9. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Be kind to one another, and I will see you in 24 hours. Oh, yeah.